It's Daniel with Dark Matter. I'm back out on another Altered Britain journey, and today I'm riding into London.
The pace of disruption is phenomenal. The accountability cannot be delegated. The accountability's got to sit with a human.
That is exactly the same diagram that I described. The pace of change and the pace of behavioural change, the delta between continues to grow.
We're riding into London today to meet Shehryar. Now, Shehryar got in contact with us after seeing some of our other films, and he has some sort of opinions that he wishes to share with us. He wants to talk to us about AI risk, AI governance, and especially what that looks like in the financial services industry, and where he has a long pedigree of helping banks understand the risks associated with AI for their customers, and of course for all of us in the wider public. So I know he's got some strong views on exactly how much governance and attention we should be putting around the risks associated with AI, but I want to hear how we balance those two things out, because I think he'll have some good insight into AI done properly does amazing things, AI done not so well does some really shitty things.
I know you've been in the industry a long time, you work within the financial services industry, but give us a whirlwind backstory.
So I'm by qualification, I'm a software engineer. I started off in tech and then I moved into audit. And within audit, a key part of what I've been connected in one way or the other is the team of data. A few years back, I was tasked with establishing a data science team that's morphed into an AI data and engineering team. I've worked for a number of global banks. I've got an interesting role whereby I both an auditor and a practitioner of AI. So I look at risks and how they can impact us, but of course roll them out as well.
Maybe break it down for me in terms of audit. What does audit mean to the layperson?
So an audit function for an organization is a function that provides independent assurance over the controls operated by management.
So making sure it's safe for people to use.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll be my layperson view on it. So, obviously in the last few years, 3, maybe 4 years, we've seen the rise of the transformer models. Now we all seem to have this kind of view on what AI might be, and that typically falls to most people's versions of ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it might be. But how have these models kind of landed within business in your view?
So you're absolutely spot on in terms of AI being around for a while, right? When I think about AI, I classify it in 2 categories: the traditional AI, machine learning, supervised machine learning, all the stuff we've been doing for decades, right? So that's traditional AI. Generative AI, which almost exploded onto the scene about 2.5 years back, I would have thought. That's interesting because in a way, it's reduced the cost of expertise. You don't need to have a lot of domain knowledge to get some level of work done in that domain through using LLMs, ChatGPT or Copilot or any of these. That's why the ones that for end user productivity, they're being adopted big time. But the thing that the business is actually grappling with is launching enterprise-wide Gen AI solutions depends very much on what sort of business you're in.
Yeah.
In a regulated business, they're being very cautious. They would probably trial it out on internal processes before they move on to anything that faces off to the customers. But I think the story might be different for the businesses that are not highly regulated.
The wider tech industry have been pushing, obviously, the hype pretty heavily into the promise of AI. There is often an issue with the perception of what ROI looks like. Obviously, the hardware, GPUs, they are massively expensive. And people are sort of going, well, everyone's sprinkling AI on everything. They're doing a pilot.
Oh yeah, I think everybody's trying to spin up pilots that never make it to production. Pilotitis is the term that...
I do like that. We'll get that on the t-shirt at some point. But yeah, the promise of that is companies buying up this stuff, but then starting to look around when they got a case of pilotitis and trying to work out where is the growth. Is that a question mark that is talked about?
It definitely is. Organizations now have targets in terms of actual pound value. For instance, for 2026, we need to deliver this level of benefits.
Yeah.
So that's moved on from just piloting and doing use cases to actually driving value. However, the benefits may not be the pound value.
Yeah.
The benefits would be in terms of building a future ready state. If you don't do it in 2026,
Yeah.
in 2028, you'd be irrelevant.
Yeah.
You've got to have a really nice and healthy balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
If you go down the route of ROI, people won't touch some of the use cases at all. And the downside of that is because you're so focused on the short-term ROI, you haven't been able to see what 2030 looks like, and you haven't built in both the capabilities with the users or the technical capabilities to get there. But if all you focus on is the platform and the infrastructure and all the other stuff without associating a pound value, I don't think that can last very long either. So it's about, I think the right approach is about starting a pilot, phasing it, and rather than using proof of concept, it's proof of value. So I've seen organizations now actually putting dollar value or pound value on what they're going to generate through GenAI.
That's good. See if they do it or not.
Yeah.
So what has kind of struck me as a bit strange is how the most software that we know and use every day updates overnight, and suddenly there's a new AI button and a new AI feature, and we didn't ask for them necessarily, but we're presented with them. I wonder if maybe it's a little bit forced adoption. Obviously we know top Google now is an AI result. So I wonder if in some ways it's not necessarily a level of adoption, but it's a level of how addicted you become to that product and or that tool. But I wonder if there becomes a consumer expectation that from leading global banks, high street banks, where's the AI here? Like, where is the thing I want to interface with? Because I'm so used to now doing that because of all the products that have been given to me. Could there be a time or a place where the crossover of those sort of temporal issues become a challenge for financial products?
You're actually quite right that people have got used to using, say, any of the GenAI products, ChatGPT, etc. And now they want that level of experience in everything they do, be that banking, even shopping, healthcare. You could go into the legal profession as well, right? Based on what's been rolled out for free to end users, their expectations have risen, and then there are certain sectors that are trying to keep up with those expectations because they know if they don't give the customers the experience they're now used to in the broader market, in the broader industry, there will be an impact. I think that creates a bit of a conundrum for regulated businesses.
I mean, yeah, I think that's where the problems exist.
Exactly.
I think maybe even I experimented with the idea of it. It's like, if I had £1,000, how can I turn that into £100,000? And it will have a good go at giving you an idea or something.
Yeah.
But, I think these become, alternative routes for people to investigate ideas which seem alien or, financial advice, wealth management, what should I buy stocks and shares in? And it will, I think on the most part, they give a disclaimer like, I'm not really allowed to say that, but hypothetically, and of course you can normally prompt your way around these types of things. So it will be interesting to see, sadly, how some of these kind of things might actually end up in poor financial planning, decision making, if we're just talking about that part of the industry, but also health advice. it misdiagnoses something that a professional would have caught, which, could be fatal. So I think, it's, again, with most of the series, when I've been, riding around the country and exploring these things, and I look at AI like it's a drug, and it's a supernormal stimulus, and ultimately there are kind of two versions of it, as I would see. There is the, let's say, pharmaceutical grade drug, which is worked on by practitioners and experts and people that are managing risk and governance around that. And then you have the other version, which is freely available over the counter, and you can go mad with it. There's no dosage requirements or anything else. We're going to start to see side effects popping up. You talk about, obviously, risk profiles of different organizations vary wildly. If you're the market leader, or have a big long heritage as maybe a financial institution, and then you've got the kind of the startup culture, which risk profile is obviously inherently different. So experimenting and letting things loose with, let's say, less than your standard of audit and risk profiling management means that these things kind of maybe get out in the wild. The new models that we're seeing as of spring 26 are interesting, challenging. Some people are concerned about them, the power of them. I mean, we've kind of seen a lot of the coding platforms become particularly good. I think there's a recent prediction that by the end of the year, we'll see our first bedroom billionaire. Have you heard this?
Yeah,
with 10,000 agents working for one individual who's made their first billion in 1 year. So the models are changing rapidly. Presumably for you, the way you have to manage risk has to change at the same speed or a similar speed.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
If there's an organization that's spun up in the last 5 years, of course they're going to have streamlined data and data sources, and it's all going to be shiny new tech, as opposed to an organization that's existed for about 150 years.
Yeah.
They'd have a lot of legacy architecture, legacy systems and all. So I think the speed can't possibly be the same of adoption if you want to go securely and safely. But more importantly, it's also the risk profile and the risk appetite. For an incumbent organization, they'd be a lot more under the regulatory lens compared to an organization that's got a very small share of the market and may not be systemically important to the economy. So both from regulatory perspective, but also the impact perspective, right? If one organization gets something wrong and it's about a few thousand customers impacted, whereas with the other one, it's about goes into millions. Of course, you can't. The controls are applied on risk basis. So you'd always expect the bigger organization, the incumbents, to go heavy on governance, and rightly so. But I think they need to optimize their governance because you've got newer models coming so quickly. You need to have a more stringent ongoing monitoring of some of the controls.
But can we really control individual behaviors that use more of this sort of consumer grade tech in their professional environments? I mean, how do you protect that?
What organizations are doing is they're actually within their perimeter, they're offering sort of enterprise version of these tools, which will have certain controls associated with them. And of course, they're going to block users bringing any other tools into their environment that are not yet authorized for use. So this is how organizations are managing it. The answer isn't to clamp down on it. The genie out of the bottle, right? You can't put it back in. If you're using it in every aspect of our life, we would end up using it at work. But how do you control that use is firstly through implementing some technological controls. How do you make sure from an organizational perspective as well, the data that's being gathered, not by the user, of the user, doesn't go beyond the organization for those organizations who are very, very concerned about the loss of their data. And then you've got to have governance. Anything that comes into the perimeter of an organization should go through the levels of governance that are applied to such tools. There's risk assessment done, there is impact assessment done, and thorough and proper testing of all these tools before they're brought into the environment. That's absolutely critical because these are powerful tools, and it's important to make sure we bring them on safely. Now, that addresses the technical side of it. Then there is the soft skills side of it, the behavioral side of the use of Gen AI. Not sure if you've heard a concept recently been coined of cognitive surrender.
No.
So,
But see how that works. Yeah.
so there's cognitive offloading, which is where you consciously offload certain things to, say, I'd use a really simplistic example, a calculator, or I use Gen AI to arrange my notes.
Yeah.
And that's what I asked it to do. Cognitive surrender is when you take the answer given to you by AI and take it as definitive without critical thinking or questioning.
Yeah.
If you think about a lot of sort of regulatory principles, some of them talk about human in the loop, which means the decision making and accountability sits with the human. But if you think about cognitive surrender, whilst we have human in the loop,
Yeah.
so it's very much a behavioral change that we need to foster as we upskill our colleagues and our workforce in the use of AI.
Yeah. I think, was it Daniel Kahneman, sort of thinking fast and slow?
Yeah.
It's system 1, system 2. I think a lot of people now talk about system 0.
Yeah.
I think is the new version of it. But I mean, I think that's the challenge, right? The all the time that we're asking people to maintain some level of governance on it, they have that kind of devil on their shoulder, which is kind of almost our behavioral, sort of psychology that sits around the fact that actually the shortcut's always the good one. So, we'll never walk around a path where we will cut across at the shortest distance, because I guess biologically we want to use as little calories as possible, because that's just evolution and how we work. So when there exists a tool that offers less strain, cognitive or physical, I suppose, we're kind of predisposed to do that. So to that end, I think this seems to be the challenge I hear time and time again, and how I kind of refer to myself is, I think I'd like to say I'm a tech optimist, but I'm a behavioral pessimist, because I think we always find really not great ways to use things, or to use them in the wrong way, and we've seen that with all sorts of technologies over the last few years. But now it seems to be more of a case of education. And I think, from your perspective inside a large organization, how can organizations begin to educate people on the right way and the wrong way? Not to feel like there's control or barriers being put around it, but to actually educate people on the reasons why we should or should not use things. But do you think it will work?
In terms of training people, in terms of upskilling them, that's not optional. That's not a nice to have anymore. For my organization and a lot of sort of big corporates, they've now got AI academies where they'd actually take colleagues through them, explaining to them the basics of AI, guidance, do's and don'ts. And those learning journeys would never be static. They would actually be dynamic, because they might be getting upskilled on the use of Gen AI last year, but now they need to think about agentic AI. A lot of large organizations have actually realized that is an absolute imperative. And within our organization as well, it's not just training colleagues or workforce or the doers, but also the leaders.
Yeah.
Because that will help them both in terms of adoption, but also in terms of applying the right level of controls and judgment. And I think there's certain principles that absolutely form part of the use of AI. The accountability cannot be delegated.
Yeah.
The accountability's got to sit with a human.
What does this look like for the younger generations that are just about to enter the working world? Lots of people questioning, is further education worth it now to your cognitive surrender? Are we doing that earlier and earlier? I mean, I've interviewed young people that have turned around and said, there's no real point in working hard or trying to do anything, because AI can either do it for me or AI will be doing it and I won't have a job. It's alarming to hear, I think, and I don't think it is all as bad as we think it is, but I think there's so much unknown. And I think education about what AI is and is not, what the risks are, but really what the benefits are as well. And I'm always looking for the good bits. And that's kind of the point of this journey, because I actually want to feel happier about it, not be feeling too depressed over the overall topic. So, I mean, where do you, on a good day, where do you see this heading?
So there is a lot of positive stuff associated with it. In terms of how it can add value to an organization, it gives you insights that you didn't have before. But also some of the repetitive tasks that people don't find particularly enjoyable can be automated using AI. You know, as they put it, let machine do the ordinary, so we can do the extraordinary.
Yeah.
If we apply that concept, this is a brilliant tool to have.
We hear the term efficiency happening a lot, you know, in terms of, well, it's going to be great, we're going to be more efficient. But even just, you know, the word efficiency implies to become more efficient, we have to remove something, because it's inherently inefficient until we remove something, which poses a bit of a problem for various obvious reasons. Yeah. Then we hear productivity. It's like it's a productivity tool, you'll be able to do more, right? Yeah. Which inherently sounds much better.
Absolutely.
But then I kind of think about it in a different way recently, going, well, if we applied this technology for innovation purposes, to discover previously unknown options, potentials to maximize growth in your business or whatever it might be. So the same technology has kind of three very different impacts depending on what you point it at. Where do you think it'll have the most impact in enterprise organizations?
I think I love the way you actually categorized it in three areas, right? Efficiency, productivity, then innovation. I think we need to, when we think about the use cases we have in organizations, big or small, we shouldn't just stumble into it. We should actually apply the lens as to what we're trying to do with it. I think one thing we want to get right is the tendency is to just automate the process currently. Are we using AI just to do the same stuff better, quicker, cheaper?
Yeah.
The real value of AI is to reimagine what we're doing and if we can do it differently. That's what's going to create new jobs. We think about new job profiles, that's what it's going to do. I think that's where agentic AI is going to be useful as well.
I ask everybody this. So best case scenario, what is your hope for the future of us and AI and how we coexist?
I think the best case scenario for us is the machines do the ordinary whilst we do the extraordinary. It takes away the repetitive stuff that bogs some of us down, so we can really focus on things that engage us. We can focus on innovation, we can focus on critical thinking. An engaged workforce is a workforce that actually delivers for its customers. And we optimize the use of these to the benefit of the workforce and the customers, and that impacts the society.
Well, what's the worst case scenario?
The worst case scenario is we race to the bottom, whereby we're just trying to adopt the latest AI tool without the relevant controls. And that applies to everybody. I mean, not just the consuming organizations, but the organizations that actually build these out as well. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. That's very important. How we apply AI has to be looked at in societal terms, economic terms, behavioral terms, rather than just in terms of ROI or in terms of efficiencies or even productivity.
So if that's the best case and we've got the worst case, where do you think we'll land?
The pace of change is phenomenal. I can speculate.
Well, by the time we probably edit this, it's all changed.
But my prediction would have changed anyway, because things would have changed. The pace of disruption is phenomenal. I hope at some point we settle down, because the innovation cycles have been squeezed, and I think we as a society and organizations, we're still grappling with how we adopt it. In my mind, I've got this graph, right? The pace of innovation in tech is almost exponential now. However, the pace of behavioral change at best would be linear. It cannot be exponential.
That is exactly the same diagram that I described to everybody. I say the pace of change and the pace of behavioral change, the delta between continues to grow. And that's my worry, is that we need to calm that innovation curve down or rapidly increase the amount of education, social change, social infrastructure that we actually roll out and do something meaningful with it.
Yeah, in a way, it can be a superpower for us, but at the same time, it can be an alien concept if you don't take people along on the journey in terms of understanding it.
Yeah. I keep referring to it as sort of saying that, it'll make the good better and the bad probably worse. It's probably the best way I can think about it.
I think you're right. I wouldn't disagree with that.
I enjoyed that chat with Shehryar. I think that was a good one. I think he's answered some of my questions about, are we taking AI risk seriously? And it would appear some organizations like his one, that I cannot name, are taking it very seriously, which makes me feel much happier after hearing it. So AI governance, AI risk, it's a real thing. I'm worried that it's only big companies that can afford the time and the resource to actually do that, whilst AI has been touted to businesses, product designers at all levels who maybe don't have that level of oversight available to them, who may make costly mistakes. I hope they don't, but they might. And the only way to try and mitigate that is for them to learn, but learning takes time. So we'll see what happens next. And I'll see you guys on the next Altered Britain journey.